in the spirit, fullest control. Confidently.
I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we're going to talk to you about techniques in dealing with relaxation or relaxation techniques. At all times of the year and in all circumstances and situations, each one of us are challenged with stress and strain and difficulties in our daily life. And so we would like to talk to you about a few ideas that we have that you can employ in relaxation for yourself in both mind and body and spirit. And so I guess today one of the best ways to talk about relaxation techniques, Iris, is to begin by talking about how we can relax our mind. And how could we begin that?
Well, to relax our mind, deep breathing is an important thing. And some people think it's strange when we say breathe, take care of your breathing first, but that's the important thing. And if we watch out and deep breathe throughout the day, we're not going to be nearly as tired at the end of the day. And when we go into meditation, which to me is the greatest relaxation technique in the world, then the deep breathing gets us into that state immediately. And so to me, deep breathing is one of the main things. And taking time each day just to center ourselves with Creator God is another way that we can avoid the doldrums of the holidays, and the holidays are approaching. But I know that you have a lot of techniques that you would be able to offer.
Yeah, I think the beginning point certainly is a wonderful one that you shared with us, which is deep breathing and being aware of our breathing. And one of the things that people are accustomed to talking about breathing is cleansing breaths. And I think the women who've gone through Lamaze and husbands that have
Yeah.
participated in that process know that well. But that deep breathing, that cleansing, not only begins to center us and calm us, but it also does some physiological things to our body. It prepares our body with oxygenation, which we
Yeah.
need tremendously.
Yes, could we show people how to do the cleansing breath? And as you said, anyone who's gone through Lamaze, they didn't teach that when my children were born, but I was fortunate to be a Lamaze coach for a young woman whose husband was going to be out of town when their baby was expected. And I found that so exciting that the young people, the young women were able to have their babies so pain-free, literally. And it was in great measure the breathing techniques they used.
Absolutely. And that began and is probably one of the great examples in which medicine and traditional medicine has employed a holistic approach, and that is to connect the mind with the body. And that connection of the mind and the body by creating the breathing techniques, the visualization techniques, and the awareness techniques, and allowing the mind and body to operate in sync and to let the body do what it needs to do
Yes.
and let the mind do what it needs to do. And then in New Thought, we talk so often about going a step further and taking the mind and the body connection and extending it to the spirit. And when
Yeah.
we put those three together, then we have a whole person. And we are, of course, always whole persons, but we don't always behave as whole persons because our mind and body and spirit are oftentimes out of sync with each other. And it's very difficult sometimes to get all three of those parts of us centered and relaxed.
Yeah. I remember once I was at a memorial service. Well, it was after the memorial service, and the grandfather of the man who was just deceased, the grandchild, was in line with me there. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I've gone back to school." And I said, "I'm studying mind, body, and spirit." And he says, "Well, that just about covers everything, doesn't it?" And I've always remembered that because it does, as you just said, cover everything, every aspect of our lives. Because when we integrate mind, body, and spirit, then we are at one with divine energy. And that's how we get ourselves centered, by being at one with divine energy. And as you often point out, at one is atonement.
At one meant.
Yes, and so that's a very exciting concept. But if we can do that throughout the day, then we don't get tired at the end of the day. And I also think it keeps sickness away. It helps us in every aspect of our lives.
It's clear just from the example that we just shared about Lamaze that it's possible to center the mind and center the body in such a way that the body does not feel the pain to the extent that it would if it were more stressed.
Yes. Well, it's being one-pointed in the thinking too, I believe. I was with a friend of mine who had cancer and he had severe pain in his shoulder. He actually was a doctor who I was surprised wasn't able to cope any better than he did, but he didn't cope well. And he felt the pain so strongly, but he knew to center his mind in a one-pointed way, but he was not able to do that because he was fighting the pain. And so that was a big lesson for me that if we, as long as we're fighting whatever it is in life that we're facing, that we don't like, that's negative in our lives, or we consider to be negative, then the fighting of it is the problem. It's not the problem. It's not what we think is the problem.
Right. It is the internal strife that's going
Yes.
on, and often it's our resistance.
Yes.
And as we resist something, and of course we know what resistance
Yeah.
means from a scientific standpoint, but if we internalize that in our person and in our mind, body, and our spirit, or any one of those or all three of them, then we have we're coming up against a block wall,
Yes.
really,
Yeah.
and we're fighting a block wall. And when that happens, we become tremendously stressed, and then things begin to happen to our physical bodies, things begin to happen in our minds, we begin to be depressed, we begin to be confused, we begin to be disoriented, and things happen in our spirit or in our soul.
Yes. And so it's just like a round robin. And the Lord Christ, Jesus the Christ, taught, resist not evil.
Mhm.
And so that was, we've had that in our forefront of our knowledge ever, but we often don't follow that. I remember one time I was so resisting something that was happening in my personal family life. And I was meditating and asking, what can I do? How can I handle this? And I heard, resist not evil. And I said, well, they're not evil. They are just doing what they think they should be done. And so then I was shown that evil was, from my connotation, it had nothing to do with what they were doing. When I was being told to resist not evil, I was being told to stop that resisting, I was being told. It had nothing to do with the other people. It's how I looked at it.
And that's always the way it is in life. It's always us.
Yes.
And yet we believe that all of these external circumstances and situations are depriving us of the peace that we need or the relaxation that we need, when in fact that's not the case at all. We believe that the phone ringing or the person at our work or the neighbor or the husband or the wife or the person that we live with, that someone or the children or the finances, that something outside, external, is influencing and controlling how it is that we feel. But how we feel is determined by us.
Exactly.
And whether we're at peace is something that is inside and not outside.
So another relaxation technique would be to not look for the culprit, but just look within ourselves to see how we're handling whatever it is we're facing.
Mm-hmm. And as we do that and begin that process of introspection, that takes us right to where we're going anyway. And you
Yes.
know that any discussion that we have of relaxation is going to take us to meditation. And so for many people in conventional Christian backgrounds or from conventional Christian backgrounds, they will understand prayer, but they'll use prayer interchangeably with meditation and believe that if you're praying, you're meditating,
Yes.
and vice versa. And of course, we know that meditation is separate and distinct from prayer, and that both are the times that we have to relate to the Creator, but we relate in totally different ways.
Yes. Well, of course, the trite way that we say it is prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening. But you know, it's been impressed on me more and more that we need to ask for what we want. And again, the Lord Christ taught us, whatsoever you shall ask in prayer, believing you shall receive. So we were told from the beginning to ask. But sometimes we think we're not supposed to ask, and we think we're being humble. And we're showing personal humility if we don't ask. But in fact, we're doing ourselves an injustice because we need to ask, because God gave mankind free will. Because of that free will, those on the inner planes of being don't help us until we ask.
Mm-hmm. And as we ask, then even in a meditation, of course, we think very often of prayers in which we ask for blessings or ask
Yes.
for our needs to be met. But in a meditation, it's very easy to ask as we go into the meditation,
Exactly.
to meditate upon the need and then to release it. And then the important aspect of meditation is to then go into the silence, which I
Yes.
think is totally foreign to many people. to sit in silence. And so many people in our faith tradition, Charles Fillmore, Mary Baker Eddy, and Ernest Holmes, and others were very accustomed to sitting in what they simply called the silence.
Yeah.
And probably the only traditional Christians that are deeply involved in the silence would be Quakers,
Yeah.
because they understand, and their faith tradition is to sit in quiet receptivity, waiting for the Holy Spirit of the presence of God to speak. And I think that that is something that may be difficult for some people to do.
Well, it always seems to be difficult for people who aren't practiced in it. And it's amazing to those who begin meditation how easy it really is. And they realize that they say what they have to say in their prayer, and also offering gratitude and offering praise and thanksgiving is important in our prayer work. But then they go right into the meditation then, and they can be silent, and they've been taught to bring their consciousness back to one pointedness with one word, and some call it a mantra. It's just a word or a sentence, and they recenter by using that technique of one word, and then they can just wonderfully relax their bodies and their minds and live from the spirit aspect of their being. And when one starts meditating, they don't like to stop it because they realize how wonderfully helpful it is. And there's nothing mysterious about it, as you know. And if we can just impress on people how really easy it is, I think more people would then meditate.
And I think too, some people have this negative connotation that if we meditate, that anything can come, and something's going to come and get us. And we don't use the term the devil and Satan in our ministry and work very much at all. But so many people are afraid of that aspect of life, and I think we need to always be aware of the fact that as long as we're centered in the presence and the power of God, and as long as we're open and receptive to that power, and we invite that power, then that's what's going to manifest.
Well, and of course, the prayer itself would be the protective link. And as long as we're attuned to the light, whether or not we've just prayed, as long as we're attuned to the light, because it's according to how we're attuning ourselves. And certainly, nothing is stronger than the light. So if we tune ourselves to that aspect of being, then darkness can't enter.
Mhm.
And so they say another old trite statement is water seeks its own level.
Mhm.
If we're seeking the darkness, we'll get it. If we're seeking the light, we'll get it. And if no one should ever be fearful of any aspect of a spiritual aspect of being, because fear allows this negativity to come in. If we fear too greatly, then it could create problems in our lives, and does.
And as we fear, we call things into being in our life. We
Yeah.
actually create them.
Yeah.
And that which I have feared has come upon me.
Yes.
And so the things that we fear the most often are manifest in our lives. And so we need to kind of put that aside. And I don't think we need to dwell a lot on that as we're talking about meditation and relaxation and breathing and the other wonderful techniques that allow us to deal with the challenges that we have in life. But this issue of meditation, in the Eastern traditions, of course, they're well practiced. And they know more about meditation than they know about prayer. Prayer is something that is not practiced as widely in the East in the way that we practice prayer, but meditation is, in that quieting sense and in this ability to be in the silence for extended periods of time. And one of the things that I'd say to our listeners who are just exploring the idea of meditation is that silence, or that time without any interaction other than connecting to the divine presence of God, probably begins with minutes in the beginning. And I think, if people can learn to sit quietly for 3 to 5 minutes, and then go from 5 minutes to 8 or 10 minutes, and from 10 minutes, and soon it's easy to allow your meditation time to be as long as you choose to have it.
Yes. Well, actually, I personally think it's best to not have extremely long meditations, because it's been my experience with people I've known who've sat like for an hour.
Mhm.
Um, Usually in the Western world, our bodies are not built our constitution is not so that we can sit for a really long time, and some are, but very often they overdo it, and then that's not a good idea. I found from a personal level, and I wonder if it's true for you, that my meditations have been more brief. I used to sit in longer meditations, and I felt the need to, and I felt like this is what I wanted to do as I was meditating. And now I have more I meditate more often, but they're brief. Do you find that's
I've
true?
I've had have meditation times that I set aside to be extensive, and then I use meditation techniques in my daily life,
Hmm.
in my business life, in the church, and so I enter into a time of quiet meditation. I can easily just enter for a minute or two or three or five.
Hmm.
Uh, for longer meditations, I would agree that I've have never found that long meditations, other than people that are withdrawing from the world, and that would be people that were going to be highly spiritually intuitive and spend a lot of time in meditation. Uh, for most of us, yes, an hour is a long time to meditate. And the other aspect of that is that as I use longer meditation times, I'll sometimes use even something like an alarm to to break the time
Hmm.
so that I know how long I'm spending, because I think it is easy to create a time of meditation as a time of escape,
Yes.
and to go there for a long period, and sometimes longer than we need to go.
Well, most of us in the Western world would do well to have that kind of escape because we're built for activity. And so we can't sit for a really long time. And people say, well, I don't know when I'm meditating and when I'm not. Well, when they're meditating is when their mind is quieted and they're looking to the inner planes of being. So it's quite simple.
Mhm.
But I think people expect great and glorious and wonderful things and noise and sound and light and angels and so forth when it's not necessarily like that. And sometimes people do have illuminating experiences, and those things do happen.
Mhm.
But as a rule, it's just the quiet inner knowing of oneness.
Mhm.
And that's if so they don't need look for something outstanding to happen. The outstanding aspect is the peace and joy they feel as they come out of their meditation.
Another aspect that I've not involved myself in, principally because I haven't had an interest, but I think you have a little bit, is the physical and mental exercises of yoga,
Yes.
and the value of those on the physical body. I say I have had no experience because I haven't, but at our church, of course, we've had a variety of experiences with wonderful yoga teachers and instructors, and the connectiveness between yoga, both from the standpoint of physical relaxation, connected to mental and spiritual relaxation or meditation. So,
Yes, well, the hatha yoga uh, is the physical yoga, and 20 years ago, my chiropractor nutritionist gave me exercises to do, and I incorporated some yoga into those, and it's worked very well for me all these years. And I know that many people think that it keeps you very youthful. It helps you in every way to study yoga. I think it must be wonderful. I've not done it that much, but those who do follow it uh, find that it's been most helpful. And there's different kinds of yoga. There's probably at least eight different kinds, and the Kriya Yoga would be the highest in the spiritual aspect of being. But I think it's very important as as you pointed out earlier, incorporate mind, body, and spirit, that we recognize the fact that our body needs to be comfortable. And the yoga exercises relaxes the body, and it stretches the muscles, and it helps to relax the body totally. And that's the value of it, because it helps to relax the body. And I know that the exercises I do are more stretching. I do them for 25 minutes every morning, and well, not every morning, but most mornings. And that's a wonderful thing for anyone who's trying to be more calm and peaceful and to learn relaxation techniques. Well, that they can get their own program going, but it's just doing it in a leisurely, stretching, light way, and not fighting the body, but just relaxing and going and flowing with the body. And as they do that, then they'll find that the mind then is more quieted.
mhm.
And a lot of busy business people, I know you run mornings, and I don't know if you've ever worked out after work or not, but I know many people who do. And it's a very relaxing time for them. And that's how they leave, that's how they delineate from the day's work to the evening relaxation with that exercise. So we just have to find out what's best for us.
Right, but the aspect of having some kind of physical exercise is tremendously important. And
Yes,
whether it's stretching in your own living room or bedroom, whether it's walking, which I know you do quite a
yes,
bit, which is one of the greatest extra physical exercises that we can have. As we begin to relieve the stress of our physical bodies, then we're able more fully to enter into the abilities to relax and calm the mind and the spirit.
yes. And we have to coordinate the mind, body, and spirit in order to be totally relaxed and whenever we think of relaxation techniques, we need to think in terms of the three. And as we do, we then calm all aspects of being. And life is, the problems of life then don't seem as difficult.
Mhm.
And they seem, we can take them in our stride. And sure, we're going to cry and be sad, and things are going to happen that make us feel down. But we come out of it better and more quickly and easily. And you mentioned walking. I agree with you. Walking is one of the very best exercises we can ever do because one thing, just deep breathing in that good fresh air
Mhm.
as we walk is one of the best treats we can give our bodies.
And most of us, the most walking we do is from our house to the car and from the car to our office or the store. And, even if we're not a walker or a runner, as so many people, it's difficult for them to get into the habit of doing these things. And it is a habit, and it has to be cultivated as a habit. All of the relaxation techniques we're talking about, including meditation and prayer,
Yeah.
need to be a habit. Going to church has to be a habit. And so if we get out of that habit, we don't find the time to do it. But I think it is important for people to create within themselves opportunities for physical exercise. And all we need to do is to look around and see the physical condition of most of us. And all of
Yeah.
us have physical challenges that we have to deal with. And we know that the environment, we know that the food that we eat, we know that the things that we think all have an impact negatively, in many cases, on our physical being, our mental well being, and our spiritual well being. And so I think just as simple as one of the things that I try to do is wherever I park as far away as I can.
Uh-huh.
And so if I go to a shopping center, I park in the farthest place. So at least I walk and get a little exercise there. If I can take stairs, I take stairs. If it's a flight or two instead of taking the elevator, there are many things that we can do. We can walk farther than we need to in the grocery store, go up and down all of the aisles. If you go to the mall and you have something to do there, instead of going to Nordstrom's or going to Robinson's or wherever it is you're going, or Kmart, wherever it happens to be, then go to the mall and walk from one end of the mall to the other and go to the next level and walk through and agree with yourself that you're never going to go to the mall unless you're going to cover every foot of it. And the whole process is simply to keep our bodies moving and to take advantage of those. So often we see people circling parking lots to get the closest space. And of course, there are people that need those close spaces. But for most of us, we do just as well to park in the outer lands and to walk a little bit. And the same at our offices and our places of work. There are opportunities that we have to avoid elevators and avoid escalators and use those stairs. And in your case, you walk in your neighborhood, which
Yeah.
is wonderful. It's a
Yeah.
great thing to do.
Well, I remember my husband saying once his secretary was short and not thin, and he said to her, "I'm sorry, the elevator's not working," and she said, "Yes, I am too, because that's when I do my squats."
Oh,
Coming up on the elevator, and that really struck him funny, and it does me. But she found the right place and the right time to do her exercises.
yeah, any place, any way that we can do things. A number of years ago, I was at a lecture on executive health, and there was a wonderful presentation, and I can't remember it now, but all of the points. But it was talking about those who have office jobs, and many of us do these days. The kind of exercises that people could do right at their chair
Yeah.
by simply contracting and relaxing and contracting and relaxing the calves of the legs and moving
Mhm.
and just getting that exercise is very important.
The isometric exercises are so wonderful. And another thing we can do in relaxation is choose our reading material thoughtfully. And that's one of the most wonderful ways of relaxing ourselves is to find inspirational material and read it.
Absolutely. And if the newspapers upset us and cause us stress, which some people they do, and if the news does that, I'm not saying avoid the newspapers and avoid the news, but at least give yourself a balance of some kind of reading material that offsets that. If you want to read the newspaper every day, then read an equal amount of something that's going to calm you. Perhaps it's poetry.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's a novel. I once had a counseling session with a husband and wife, and the husband was so bothered because his wife had her nose in these romance novels all the time. And when I talked to her, she said, it's the only relaxation I get. And so as we talked about it, we ended up agreeing it's a wonderful thing for her to do. And maybe he needs to do something else. Maybe he needs to read the sports page while she reads
Exactly.
her novels, and create abilities that we have to have good times of enrichment.
Yes.
You know, and enrichment is the key word.
Yes,
And
that man could have taken up mystery reading,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Reading mystery stories, or he could have found something that would take the equivalent time of his wife's reading. Then he wouldn't have been so upset about her
Upset.
reading. I'd like to say that your book, In the Garden of Life, is a wonderfully inspiring way of passing the time and relaxing, because it gives us true stories of life and examples and parables of how we can quiet our thoughts and apply those things to our own, those truths to our own lives.
Yeah, spiritual reading is tremendously important, and so many people think that means reading the Bible.
Yes.
And for some of us, it is. It's important. I enjoy reading the Bible every day, but many people don't. And there are so many wonderful spiritual writings. And for those who don't want to watch or to read spiritual things or listen to spiritual tapes, there are inspirational things and uplifting books and tapes that are available. And that's what we're talking about, just getting into a mode of relaxation in terms of what we're feeding our conscious and subconscious mind.
Yes, and to just plan to read perhaps for 5 minutes or even 2 or 3 minutes each morning.
Reading and then tapes are wonderful in today's environment, and I don't want to substitute listening to tapes for reading, because I think reading is important, tremendously so. But tapes create a lot of opportunities for us to relax as well. Dr. Freelander and I have been sharing with you ideas for relaxation techniques and the connectiveness of the mind and the body and the spirit. And we hope that you found this information useful and that you'll apply it to your life, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Confident living cleanses my soul, giving the spirit fullest control. Confident living rights every wrong. Dynamic power helps me be strong. Confident living comforts my heart. From such a blessing I can't depart. Confident living helps me expand visions of value, the kingdom at hand. Confident living, talent to win, gift of the spirit moves from within.